What is good? Osiris here, stuck in the middle, and this will go on Critical Theory News. Let's check in on Utah, see how they're doing in the conservative, religious, and Republican, you could say, state of Utah. Utah Jazz Scholarship Program makes every win a little more significant. With each victory, the Jazz provide a Utah high school student from an underrepresented group with a full college scholarship. You might look at that on the surface. You might think that's okay. But when you do this identitarianism, there's always people who are left out. And you're going to have to answer to them and hear from them. And how you answer to them really tells me a lot about your values, your ideology, and how much you really believe this stuff. Let's check in on Spencer Cox.
Our next caller, that is David in Highland. Good afternoon, David. What is your question for the governor?
Hi, Governor. The Utah Jazz is excluding white children from consideration for their scholarship program. Do you think this is racist? And what will you do to prevent the Utah Jazz from acting in this racist manner?
Well, I don't think it's racist. In fact,
I love how he asked the question, like, do you think it's racist? And then just to make sure he answered for himself, it is racist. It doesn't matter what you think either way, the person who asked the question. And of course, the governor, let's look at his body mannerism and look at his body movements and his eye movements. And he doesn't believe a word he's saying. He looks like a hostage victim.
it's racist. In fact, I think it's in response to, unfortunately, some very difficult and racist injustices that have happened in our community for a long time. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do for the Utah Jazz. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
What are you looking at?
In our community, in our injustices that have happened.
What are you looking at? He asked you a question like, "Where you? Look at me, man. Look at the camera." Why does he have a mask on? He's like in a mansion with a mask on. His body mannerisms look terrible. If this guy was in a job interview with me, I'd be looking at like, this guy is just completely lying in front of me.
In our community for a long time. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do for the Utah Jazz. Absolutely nothing. Because you know what? I believe in the Constitution, and I believe in the freedom of businesses to make decisions, and decisions that are right.
With that argument, if you believe in the freedom for businesses to make this decision, which is a perfectly legit argument, then we would have to repeal some of the civil rights legislation. We'll have to just go back to Jim Crow. You could say white people allowed, no white people allowed. You could do whatever you want.
Right for them. Your kid or my kid, they have no right to the Utah Jazz's money, and the Utah Jazz and Ryan Smith can do the things that they want to do with their funds and their revenues. And look, it's an awesome program, and it's something that we should be celebrated. The cool thing is that the Utah Jazz have more wins than any team in the nation, which means that there are more scholarships available for kids in our state, and those kids, these are kids who are in at-risk communities. These are kids who have struggled. These are kids who have not had access to the same opportunities that my kids and your kids have had. We live in a nation that does have a very difficult history, and sometimes we try to ignore it. A history of racial injustice, a history where of course slavery being the most severe and awful example of that. But look, that stuff doesn't go away overnight. And kids, we're working very hard on equity, making sure that every kid in our state has the same opportunities as others.
He's just spouting nonsense. There's the E word, equity, and that is what this is about. It's about trying to prop up underrepresented groups, and those underrepresented groups tend to be more Democrat. It's just funny how that works out.
And so looking for ways to lift communities that have been historically and disproportionately impacted isn't racist at all. In fact, it's a great way to overcome racist. And I'm really proud of the Jazz and the great things that they're doing there.
Feckless, embarrassing. Those are the type of leaders that you see nowadays. A Republican is like, this isn't about party or not. It's about corporate or not. This is a corporate guy. Corporate answer. He's not a populist. He's not for the people. He can't answer the question like a normal human being. He's looking off to the side, and the governor is saying, you heard him right. He's making the argument that you could send black people to the back of the bus. You could say no blacks at all allowed. That's his argument with the business there. Perfect example of a guy who's speaking and he looks like a hostage victim or a puppet. How do they get elected? They are intertwined with the corporate media, get propped up, and I think a lot of people are exposing it now, though. This stuff, especially on the Republican side, on the Democrat side, they're just like walking zombies. On the Republican side, people are looking at this like you don't belong. What you are saying is not constitutional, and you don't belong in what we're turning the party into, which is America first. And we don't look at race like it's separate from the country. There's no policy that we would do that would say, oh, this goes for underrepresented groups. That doesn't make any sense. And we're not for that. We're not for discrimination. We're not for Jim Crow. We don't want to regress back to that moment. This is what they think is a progressive movement. It's actually regressive, obviously, as you can see. He's not legit. He's a fraud. He's a phony. He's embarrassing. He just, Utah's white, right? Like, Utah is probably 93% or over 90% white. And he's talking to most of his constituents. Beautiful state. He's a sad, feckless, racist, embarrassing governor. There's the equity word. With Republicans like these, who needs Democrats? Let me know what you think. Take care.